Welcome. My name is Shelley Pomerantz. I sit on the Friends of the McGill Library Committee, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this virtual Shakespeare lecture, celebrating the bard and the physical stages and spaces that bring his words to life. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that McGill University sits on land which long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose footsteps have marked this territory where peoples of the world now gather. This lecture is brought to you as a partnership between the Friends of the McGill Library and Stratford Festival. It's generously supported by Donald Walcot, Chair of the Friends of the Library. We'll be hearing from him later this evening to conclude the event, and we'll also hear from Colleen Cook, Trenholm Dean of Libraries. The Friends of the Library is a volunteer organization that raises awareness about the McGill Library's unique world-class resources and raises funds to support the library's collections, services, and spaces. The Shakespeare Lecture is one of 3 annual lectures presented by the Friends of the Library. The lecture was established in 1992 to build awareness of the library's exceptional collections in the area of all things Shakespeare. Shakespeare has a long history with the McGill Library. He's the most represented author in the library's rare books and special collections. This includes the main collection and 80 special collections, from original folios to fine press illustrated editions of the sonnets, costume albums, portraits, children's books, and more. The early editions of Shakespeare's plays in rare books and special collections include a copy of the second folio of collected plays from 1632 and 2 copies of the fourth folio from 1685. The library also holds a 1598 quarto of Richard II. Of note, the Sir E.K. Chambers Shakespeare collection, acquired in 1954, encompasses 400 printed studies on Shakespeare, his plays, and the Elizabethan theater. Over the years, the library has been fortunate to receive numerous generous gifts to strengthen the Shakespeare collection, making it world-renowned. When our spaces reopen to visitors, we hope you'll come explore the collections for yourself. I now have the pleasure of introducing our 2 eminent speakers who will share their vision for the Stratford Festival's new Tom Patterson Theatre and talk about how this exceptional theatre space came to be. The conversation will last an hour and will include some questions. During the discussion, if you have a question, please email it to info.library@mcgill.ca. That's info.library@mcgill.ca. And our speakers will answer as many of your questions as time allows. Actor, director, general manager, general director, executive director, and currently artistic director, Antoni Cimolino has performed all these roles at the Stratford Festival. For his exceptional contribution to the theatre, in 2015, he was named to the Order of Canada. In addition to performing in and directing many plays at Stratford, in 2014, he and executive director Anita Gaffney launched Stratford Festival on Film, an ambitious project to capture all of Shakespeare's plays on film. So far, the festival has produced 15 films, including Cimolino's productions of King Lear, Hamlet, Macbeth, The Tempest, The Merry Wives of Windsor, and more. Antoni Cimolino also oversaw the successful launch of an endowment fund, which now stands at $81 million and made possible 4 major construction projects, including the extensive renovation of the Avon Theatre and the creation of the Studio Theatre. In 2018, he and Anita Gaffney launched a $100 million campaign to build the glorious new Tom Patterson Theatre, which you'll be hearing about tonight. At the time of its public launch, this campaign had already achieved 70% of its target. Siamak Hariri is a founding partner of Hariri Pontarini Architects, a 150-person practice based in Toronto. His portfolio of nationally and internationally recognized buildings has won over 60 awards, including the Governor General's Medal in Architecture. He's been celebrated as one of Canada's artists who mattered most by the Globe and Mail, and with his partner, David Pontarini, received the 2013 Architectural Firm Award from the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. Recent public and private projects include the Baha'i Temple of South America, the Science Research and Innovation Facility at the University of Windsor, the Nicole Building at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, and of course, the Tom Patterson Theatre. Siamak Hariri's work embodies abiding commitment to the essentials of architecture. He brings to every project a profound interest in light, form, sight, material, and craft. And now, gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Hi, Siamak.
Hi, Antoni. Thank you so much, Shelley, for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about the new Tom Patterson Theatre. This theatre was supposed to open in the spring of 2020, and then something happened. And so we are looking forward to opening it this coming summer. We're going to talk about how we came to the decision to renew it, the process we went through, and try to, get a few secrets from Siamak as to how the creativity flowed in terms of creating the building. So rather than keep you in suspense to see what it looks like later, we're going to give you just a little bit of a taste now. So here you go, the new Tom Patterson Theatre.
We kept thinking, how are we going to create moments of pause, moments of delight, surprise?
Something that is contemporary, beautiful,
harmonious and simple.
Something that would engage with the river.
Something that would really have a lasting impact for the festival and for the community.
Something that deserves to last.
And then once you've gone, you say, let's go again.
So that's like a bit of a time bubble, that because now, of course, there's furniture, there's gardens, and it's looking back in time to when we did that video, but it does capture the beautiful bones of the building, the glass, the bronze, the balance of the space. This that you're looking at now was the old Tom Patterson. Here it's known as the third stage. And it's a Quonset hut. It was built on rubble. It was basically a flax mill had been on that site around 1900. Rather than removing it, they simply burnt it, collapsed it, and built this structure on top of it. Now, it wasn't terribly strong. In the winter, we used to have to take down the lights, because if we had snow and we had lights, we would have no theater at all. The building would collapse. So it was something that was very makeshift, but the history of it was extraordinary. Over the years, we had Billie Holiday perform in this space, Duke Ellington, who did music for different plays. Here you can see Tom Patterson in the center there, right by the Tom Patterson Theatre. On the left is our artistic director at the time, David William, who had the very good idea to name this space after Tom Patterson. It turned into a much loved space, in part because of the stage configuration. So we had tried different configurations in the space, but this elongated thrust, which is a kind of meditation on the original thrust stage of the festival theater, really provided intimacy, dynamism. You could really kind of move on that stage, and everybody felt not only close to it, but felt like there was incredible power in that space. And you could see from the ceiling, it was pretty rough. It was the only space of our four theaters that kind of gave you a sense of how Stratford began, back to the early days of 1953. And I mention that because with this beautiful auditorium, so simple, so rustic, that works so well for the plays, it was with great trepidation that we considered replacing this space. For many years, we thought, we're just going to ruin something that works, and how are we ever going to replace it? And what's the value proposition of replacing it? In the sense that, you're taking away a theater that is dynamic and works. Okay, backstage was pretty horrible. There was basically two dressing rooms. for 30 people. We shared the space with a number of different users, and so the complications of making a change to the site were huge, and we'll get into that in the process that we went through. And so what would warrant making a change? And what we realized was, if we can preserve the very best of this building, the dynamism of this stage, provide some further flexibility, really support our artists, both backstage and on stage with lights and sound, make it so it's an extremely workable space, but above all, provide beauty that complements this site, then we would be able to come up with something that really merited making a major change. So I'd like to now introduce you to a gentleman who is the former Dean of Architecture at the University of Waterloo. He led us through a process of trying to find the right firm to do this. And basically the brief we gave him was, we want to do this right. The central idea behind the Stratford Festival in 1953 was architectural, to rearrange the relationship between the stage and the audience. It was the first time this happened since Shakespeare's time, that we put the text and the text and the actor right in the middle of the audience. And so architecture isn't incidental to Stratford. It's at the heart of what we do. And we wanted to make sure this was the best theater in the world. Here's Rick Haldenby.
When we started this project, it was clear that we had to have excellence, and it had to be excellence at an international standard. The project involved the selection of the architect, so we prepared a list of about 125 projects, went through them, and then selected out of those 125. We got it down to 48. Then the building committee cut it in half again. We asked for submissions from those 24 firms, and I asked them specific questions. We narrowed it down to 8 firms for interviews, and then we selected 4 to do a design competition. One project stood out. It was remarkably imaginative in the way it organized the kind of functional necessities with tremendous efficiency and elegance.
That's absolutely right. I remember Siamak beginning to speak in the competition, and I knew immediately I was standing in front of an artist, and everything that he started to describe made so much sense in my heart. Siamak.
Wow. How do I continue on with this? Thank you so much, Antoni. And I have to say that throughout the process, we felt like we were obviously standing on the shoulders of an institution that had great legacy and institutional runway. That the first letter that we received from Stratford was, architecture was at the heart of what they were trying to do and has taken them 50 years forward. And it was a big success. The Festival Theatre was a big driver towards your success, and that you were hoping aspirationally that this project would take you for the next 50. And so we were really, really excited. And I show you this first noodle because sometimes the idea, the essence, the soul of what we were trying to do is captured in the first gesture. And this was just this idea of, how do we do something that's an attractor? Because it is something to have architecture help bring people to something as wonderful as the Stratford Theatre is. How do we help with that? And how do we make this really as something that becomes a kind of a jewel, a beacon? We kept using these words. And then second was the river. How do we engage with this river? How do we find, because there's a road between the site and the river, and how do we make this so that from everywhere you're constantly aware of the river? And then the third, which Antoni spoke of, is there was a lot of love for the existing Tom Patterson. And we had to be very mindful. This was an early impulse. We said, if it's going to be a jewel, it should have a sense of glitter. Next, please. And this is the river. We're next to the site, but you'll see that we had to find a way to skip across the road so that we could fully engage with the river. And I remember we talked about this at the competition stage, and we said, you know, if we lift the entire scheme 7 feet, here's the sketch, we might from everywhere be able to not see the road. And it was a wonderful experiment, because it actually has now proven itself to be right. Don't you think, Antoni?
Absolutely. And I've taken through different artists through this space, Siamak, and one actor, she said something amazing. She said, wow, the outdoors looks better from in here than it does out there. So there's something about the framing of everything around the theater that you've managed to achieve.
Yeah, and really it was about this idea, if we could engage with the river and if we could create a jewel, then how do we do that? And so that was what we tried to present during the competition. Next, please. And so this idea of veil, this idea of maybe it's curtain, maybe it's made out of something that has presence materially like bronze, and also by engaging with the landscape in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of directions, meant that every time you come to the theater, you would have fun, but every time you stepped also within the volume of the theater and then came out, it would create this wonderful dialogue between being in the magic of the theater and then stepping out to a whole other magic of the river and the experience of the landscape. And as we were developing this scheme, we said, yeah, but the river has these eddies, these wonderful flow, and eddies are places where you can linger. Minnows tend to hang out in the eddies. And we talked a lot about how theater is also about when you step out, you want to be able to bump into someone and have a conversation and feel like you can cozy up to certain nooks and crannies, and how we could develop this zone that's outside of the theater as this place that has these eddies. And so that then evolved into an image which we looked at here, which was Joseph Boy's print of a flower, which was a big inspiration for us. This red line is the outline of the flower. The blue might represent the river. Next, please. And then that became maybe what we do is we allow the form that then is the outline of various rooms to become the form of the veil. Next, please. But then, curiously, we started looking at river plants. And the beauty of river plants is that they work in the direction of the river. And we said, but we don't have the river on all sides. And so this idea that we would take this veil all the way around didn't seem to make sense. So we started to actually create a building that was like the river plants that worked in the direction of the river. And you'll see that it stretches, it grabs, it reaches from corner to corner. This site is a triangular site. It has a 20-foot elevation to the top left corner. And so by raising the theater up to the 7 feet and then creating this veil that goes from end to end, all of the various pods and rooms stretch out and get these extraordinary views that are very different, really, from one area to the other. And you'll see that next, please. So this becomes the veil, the red becomes the veil, and then the gardens played a very important foreground role. And then the center, which is the center on which you enter, this backbone, then becomes grounded by the theater. And so the theater and that beautiful elongated stage really becomes completely integrated and harmonized with the form of the building. And you feel the drum of the theater and that counterpoint of the strength and stability and frankly, the stillness of that theater volume against the movement of the veil was really quite a wonderful surprise in the design. Next. So this really shows the idea. The river is the blue line, and then you have this veil or curtain, which is the red line, and the top line, which is straight, then creates this kind of orthogonal geometry that holds as a counterpoint, the geometry of the theater. Next, please. So, and of course, between the festival and downtown Stratford, the TPT has this role of stretching both to the city and stretching back to the festival. And we like that very much along the river. So this was an early sketch of how this veil, this curtain, of course, the glimpses and the surprise and these moments of pause and these kind of bumping into each other and being able to hang out and making a day of going to the TPT was something that we talked a lot with Antoni and the team, and that then allowed us to evolve this idea. Next, please. So these are early models. This is a bronze model of that, the first iteration, and we kept to it. It pretty much stayed the same since the competition. I mean, we evolved the forms of the veil, don't you think, Antoni? But the basic concept of this curtain, this bronze curtain, has remained. And these are studies of how that would create these very tight curves that then create these wonderful eddies were an important part of the exploration.
And Siamak, I have to say, in the competition, there was some brutalist presentations. There were presentations where I felt like, well, I've seen that building before. I've seen the architect's work before, and it was derivative. And, it's, whereas I felt with this, I felt like I'd never seen this before. I've never seen this building before. It was intuitive. It was original. And I felt like within what you've created, we could then make the things we needed, the functionality we needed, and we'll get into that in a moment, to have a working theater. And but the aesthetics are ravishing.
Yes, and I remember during the competition, we actually squarely put that on the table, that we would not do the inside of the theater without first having a very strong collaborative engagement with you and your team. And I remember distinctly why, because we asked some basic questions of 3 of the world's best theater consultants on something as simple as, well, how high would you go step to step on the seats? And we got 3 different answers. And so I remember saying to Antoni at the time, I said, Antoni, we would not even touch this without first beginning a process with you. And really, because the whole smushing and the intimacy and making that feel really right, and how comfortable that all would get to was an essential collaborative process. But here on all of the other program elements, which included a new members lounge, this very, very strong marquee, which really makes it abundantly clear where you have to enter. You come in on axis, and then we cut this opening through the wall of the theater, so you get a glimpse of that long thrust stage. And then at theater time, the curtain closes that, and you go inside. And then all of the various eddies become the cafe, become this wonderful Lazaridis forum space, which is for 225 people to come for interesting theatrical performances and seminars and all kinds of musical performances. And then at the end, there's one more eddy at the very end, which then becomes the education program. And each one of these together form the bronze veil. And I think what's important in this drawing, which I'm so happy about, is that the gardens play a very important role. And you can see how much garden was put in front of each of those pods as part of the veils. So the members lounge get a garden in front, then they get the long view. We put in these gorgeous cherry trees that we spent forever fundraising and finding and bringing. And then each of the other wings have these long gardens that you can see that rake with the kind of the order of the river. And then so you get the the pods or the eddies, you get garden as foreground, and then you get river. And that was the idea. So each of these, and the seasonality, we worked with Ron Holbrook, who I think is a painter in the landscape. He's as close as we have to kind of being a magician with gardens. And I love working with him. I work almost exclusively with him nowadays on gardens. And I'm just so looking forward to seeing how these gardens will effloresce in time. Next, please. So this was the competition image. We said, you know, the long view will hopefully be that river, that ribbon of gold that we presented, that glitter, that jewel, that attractor, that kind of, what is that? I want to go there. And then once you go there, hopefully you say, oh my goodness, I just love that, and I want to come back. Next, please. And this was the competition image that we presented, this idea of it, the strong marquee that is clear both from this side but also from the other side, so that no matter where you come from, you know exactly where you have to enter. The Tom Patterson only has one entrance. Next, please. And then, of course, these eddies, as we talked about. So hopefully you can see that, and the river coming right into each of those spaces, and the landscape being an important part of the experience, no matter where you are within these various spaces. Next, please. And the gardens here you can see with the veil. Next, please. The Lazaretus Hall, which I'm so looking forward to seeing it working, is beautiful. And the long views to the river again, you can see. Next, please. So these are the, yeah, please go ahead, Ant.
So you can see the different pods. Now, you know, the Stratford Festival didn't have much in the way of public space, because the idea was you open the doors, you go outside, that's your shared space. But as we introduced different programs like the Meehan Forum, for instance, the Meehan Forum has over 150 different presentations that are going to take place this coming summer, and they range from musical performances to accomplished artists. We've had the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court doing mock trial. We've had all sorts of incredible speakers, Romeo Dallaire, and so that is the Lazaretus Hall that Siamak has just spoken about. The education and laboratory space is critically important and can really help us in terms of experimentation in theater. And at the heart of it is, in the center there, a beautifully kind of supported Tom Patterson stage based upon the Tom Patterson elongated stage. It can also go into the round. This theater needs to do what every theater must deliver, which is it needs to be able to be absolutely quiet. We need to be able to have lighting and sound, which will make it work incredibly well. We need to be able to get 600 people, and that's how many fit into this theater, in and out of a washroom, ideally having a glass of wine somewhere in there, or some ice cream during a 15-minute interval. So there's some basic things that if a theater does not deliver, air handling that is comfortable, appropriately directed in the auditorium, and absolutely quiet, parking. So we worked with Siamak, and we have 1,000 people who work at the Stratford Festival. So while we used theater consultants, Fisher Dax among them out of New York City, who we worked with a number of times before, really the work of what we needed was driven by the 1,000 people who work at the Stratford Festival, who over the course of now 70 years have developed a wealth of experience and knowledge. So I'm very proud of our people. They worked so well with Siamak's team. And I have to say, Siamak, one thing that I will owe you forever for is that you insisted that we lock everything down in advance. You did such careful work that we had, I don't think, any change orders as we went on. And that enabled us to really think through what we wanted, deliver it without going over budget. And so in addition to the building being gorgeous, it's actually great value.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned also the fact that You know, the back of house functions, Anthony, we should stress how much we worked with you to make sure the rehearsal space was in the right place and that people could get to it and work in off season, and you could have different productions come past each other. There's a very strong axial spine to the scheme, which you'll see is really on the line of the entry, and that organizes all of the back of house functions as well. So that was something that we worked very closely. Our team also, I'm just enormous respect for our team and how they work closely with your team. And it took time to work through the various elements. But once we got it, I think that was the right approach. Was once we got it, we drew it, we made sure that it was frozen, and then we didn't have too much of that happening while we were on construction, under construction. Definitely was a big part of the management process. So we looked at the original TPT and we said, you know, the interior of the theater should be this gorgeous wooden basket, because there's just so much institutional memory around the wood and the shape. And so we tried to echo that with the interior of the new theater. And we love this idea that maybe it would be dark wood and would have this kind of pattern that you see on the left. So it has this warmth. It feels like a wooden basket. It has all of this porosity so that it deals with the acoustic requirements, which Antoni, we must have heard a million times. We better get that right. And we were very, very nervous to make sure that you were super, super happy about that. And then there are these catwalks, which then became this kind of wooden chandelier, which I'm very happy about, that we dressed up the bottom of the catwalk so that they dealt with elements that we needed acoustically. They were deflectors, and at the same time, you didn't have these kind of ugly metal things that were hanging above your head. Rather, we turned something, I think, that normally is just painted metal into something that was elegant and part of the wooden ceiling. Next, please. So this is, you can see, is the 600 is on the right, and then 750 when you do it fully in the round. And we treated this like pure classical theater. We said the most gorgeous original theaters that were just these Roman amphitheaters had this perfect sense of geometry and order. And so if the veil is going to move all over the place, why can't we just create this room with this pure order? And I love that we worked very closely with you, Antoni, to arrive at this and set up mock-ups. And you would sit in the chairs and you would bring people, and you would have the mock-up of the height and how close we were getting to the stage. And all of that was crafted. And then we were able to draw the rest of the building. And so really it came from the inside out. In fact, we could not get to anywhere until we got the distance from the edge of the stage to the first seat perfect. And by perfect, we mean that you would say you're happy with it.
Yeah, and I lost a lot of sleep over how the rake of the side of the auditorium, because it needs to be steep enough that it embraces. So the audience is virtually like they've had their arms around the stage, and it defines the stage by the body of the audience, because, you know, theater is a community that comes together, and the power of this stage is it puts a story right in the middle of that community. And so if it's too steep, it's scary. And if it's not steep enough, if it's passive, it just doesn't accomplish the back and forth, the exchange between the audience and the stage. In terms of the quiet that you were able to establish, I mean, we have air ducts that are so big you could drive a Mini Cooper through them, so they can deliver lots of cold air in the right spots, so we're not freezing the audience and boiling the actors. And the way that you design the system is remarkable. The air lands on the stage to cool the actors running around in heavy costumes, and then the air ducts are at the back of these walls that you see, so that the air then gently, as it warms, rises up over the audience and out of the room. And you manage to do that, you and your teams, while the ambient sound in this room is only about 12 decibels, which is absolutely quiet. And you know, it's a theater of the spoken word, with Shakespeare. If you don't have the ability to have absolute quiet, you have nothing. So it's really remarkable how these seemingly contradictory things were able to be delivered. And one last thing, this looks simple, right? It's a bunch of chairs around a bunch of boards. There's a stage and it's anything but simple. Like if you were to have a proscenium house where you have got basically a box at the end of a shoebox, and that's where the stage is, it's much easier to project sound out. The lights are all inside, they're not over the audience's head. You know, the actors are all singing or talking in one direction out to the audience. Here, everything's much more complicated because we're all in one room together. So the way that your team was able to work with ours to accommodate all that, to work through it, was really exciting.
Yeah, and also the choice of exactly where the VOMs work and how that would work with the seating. We could talk about an hour just on that, right? And how much you wanted the flexibility and how you spoke to us. It was so important, all of the things that you kept mentioning about how within this stage there is no back. And I think that's worth talking about. That we had to design this in such a way that you would be able to hear if you were back of the actor. So even though they were speaking in this direction, the people behind the actors would be able to hear. Maybe you want to chat about that a little bit.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the aisles and how they're laid out, like the way that you move bodies through space in this stage has everything to do with their relationship to those aisles. You know, when you're an actor, and let's say there's two people on the stage, you need to put the other actor you're acting with into one of those aisles so that everybody in that house can see you and them. And yes, you're right, Siamak, there's no such thing as front here. It's like a sculpture garden. You have a group of bodies that become the set. Those bodies in space tell the story through the rhythm of their movements. And it's not false. Like a proscenium arch is absolutely false. They're all facing out in an unnatural way. Here, you just have people like taking a bunch of marbles and throwing them on the ground. It has that sense of just natural order in disorder.
And accessibility. We wanted the right proportion of wheelchair possibilities right at the stage. So it's not all at the top. And that, of course, meant that we had to create a whole system to get people of all walks of life able to get right down to the bottom of the stage as well as the top. And that was a very important part of working that through. So it involved a dedicated elevator and a system for circulation where you could come at it from stage level.
Yes, and that's critically important and really hard to deliver in this kind of auditorium, but you've done it here. We can, you know, for those people who are disabled, they can be absolutely close to the stage, or if they choose, they can be further back. So it's quite democratic and very inclusive.
And I remember that you the washrooms. So we kept saying, here's the number, and we kept hearing double it. So that's another thing we did. I mean,
Well, I know this sounds boring, but in the old Tom Patterson, we can never start the play at 8 o'clock and we could never have a 20-minute interval. So I remember doing a production of Cymbeline, which was the right amount of time. It was 3 hours, and it never played 3 hours because we couldn't, it sold very well. We always had to, and that meant our crew costs went through the roof. So, you know, and when you don't start a play right at 8 o'clock, you're burning goodwill. So those simple things make a theater work, and I'm fingers crossed, but I feel great hope here.
So this is what we call a section. It's a cut through the site, and you can see that from the right-hand side to the river is about a 20-foot difference in elevation. And so what we tried to do was take advantage of that. We lifted the main floor elevation, as I discussed earlier, by about 7 feet. And you can see how really that causes the gardens and everything to kind of skip across the road, which is about a third of the way in from the left. And you can barely see it because the gardens are kind of across it. And then what's interesting here is that we were then able to enter the theater at the top and then work our way down. And that, I think, what made it feel, as we said, like those beautiful, those archetypes of theater, which were the Roman amphitheaters, which always started, they were basically a landform cut into the hill. And that's how we imagine this. And that the theater is this really strong grounding figure that then allows the organic shape of the veil to work around it. So you have this movement against this kind of simple, strong, symmetrical groundedness of the theater shape itself. Next, please. And we did these models to prove to ourselves and to prove to Antoni and his team. This you can see is the wooden basket is in that model. That's the shape of the catwalks up above, and they become part of that wood chandelier. So the whole idea of, is this going to be for us and for the people that remember the TPT with such love, is this going to be, paying homage and respect to the warmth and the intimacy of the original TPT? And that's really what we were trying to study here with this. This was a section. I like this shape that then was formed by this wooden basket. It has both, it recollects the original shape, but also has a slight inflection towards bringing the room closer and tighter and more intimate. And I think that was what we were after altogether, so that you really feel like if someone, Antoni, you should speak about this, because you used to talk about this a lot to us, but that the theater, that the performance is not the stage alone, that it's all about one side of the room seeing the other side, and how that kind of cross-pollination of emotion really creates the uniqueness of the theater experience. And that was we were after.
That's what Tyrone Guthrie created. And, it's not like a movie theater where you're all pretending the person beside you doesn't exist and you're looking at the stage or the film. In this case, these people are looking at not only at the stage, but at the people around them, at the people across. It's a communal act. It's a very, very conscious act of attending theater. And you come together and communally, you work out your values. What do you find ridiculous? What do you find beautiful? And so this space is, I've gone into so many theaters recently where the audience is meager on the side. It's just not, this needs to have the balance that we can see here that I think you've managed to capture. Siamak, we've got about 10 minutes, and so
we should run quickly. Yes.
And maybe get a question or two from,
So maybe just, this is the final building built across, this is an image across the river, but we could just go quickly through these, and the garden's starting to come. It's the first year for the garden, so we have to let the gardens have a couple of years to come in their full, what they will become. But right now, this is that first entry. You can see this, and how this bronze veil grabs the river from that floor level, so that you really barely are aware of the road. You just go right across, right to the river from every room. This is the members' lounge, the cafe, and there's a wonderful terrace outside of the cafe, which we put really in the sweetest spot in the whole place. So you get the long views on both directions of the river. It's truly, as the people used to say, it's right at the bend in the river. So it really grabs everything, and we're hoping that becomes a big hit. This is Lazaridis Hall, and we have these gorgeous long bars, which there's 3, maybe 4 of them in different places that will be the gathering spots for food and coffee and ice cream and all of that. And then on both sides are long, long banks of washrooms. So you can easily go also to the washroom. And the veil, what's nice about it is, of course, like a curtain, it collapses and then it opens up. So it becomes quite solid with this ethereal light, and then at certain moments opens out to the garden. So And the brick on the left is the drum of the theater. And we like the kind of stone-like feel of the brick, very simple form. And throughout the whole lobby, we designed a very custom wood ceiling system that then helps a lot with the acoustics, so that that dampens the whole acoustics of the lobby experience and all of the various pods, so that they become both flexible in terms of their lighting and what they can hang from that, but at the same time, the sound is very quiet. You don't have that kind of bouncy sound that makes these spaces impossible. And this is the final theater. You can see the wood ceiling and the wood chandelier of the catwalks. And we used the one strong punch of color for all the seats, which we also custom designed with Antoni and his team. So I think we're approaching.
Is there a final?
I think this is it.
I don't know if we should move straight to questions. We have a few in advance. One was about the community consultation process. What did we do in that regard? Well, it was quite extensive. It was both with our city government. There were different users on this space. There was an Optimist Club in the corner. There was the lawn bowlers. There was a Rotary club there with seniors. And we're right by the hockey arena. And in case you think Stratford's a theater town, you're wrong. It's a hockey town. So I discovered very quickly that the purpose of this site was really to provide enough parking for the hockey arena. So we had a lot of people to consult, including our city government. We worked very hard with them. And we managed to help each one of these different users find, we were able to bring the seniors group together on another site where they were currently playing pickleball. Now more of them are playing pickleball. The lawn bowlers are now on a municipal course where they're delighted because the clubhouse there had a liquor license and they didn't have one before. And for some reason that seems to improve everybody's bowling. So overall, it took a lot of, it really took a village to make this village. It was a very good process, I think, at the end. The town is very proud of this building. There were, of course, people at the beginning who thought, why are you doing this? It's right in the middle of Stratford. It's so modern and we have such a, Victorian town. Everybody is in love with this building. They come up to me and stop me on the street to say how much they love it. So I think overall, the town as a whole is improved by this. Siamak, my phone shut down the next question. They want to talk about what did we do for environmental, sustainability, social dimensions. Let me begin by saying the building has a lot of glass, and it's right beside a lake that is filled with birds of every kind. So we wanted to make sure that the glass was etched with markings so that the birds would know it's there and not crash into it. And it's just been remarkable how this has worked out. We've not had one bird hit the glass. We also, of course, looked at energy usage. And Siamak, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because we wanted to make sure we had a building that was, LEED certified.
Well, maybe what I can do is, because it's so extensive, but let me say that we definitely, from the beginning, it was LEED Gold at minimum. And so that's what we achieved. But we can put forward for a total summary of all of the various things that we did to achieve that. And it was definitely burned into the design approach right from the beginning. The good thing is it does have a lot of glass, but it mostly north and east facing. So that made it possible for us to do the veil in glass. And then, as you will see on the south side, it's almost all solid. And that's how we achieved the right proportion of glass. And the rest of it was, it's all about the many ways in which we achieved the sustainable targets, both in, I don't know, the gardens, for example, and how they're watered, and the systems, the mechanical systems, and we can get into the details of that, maybe post it for people here.
There's a lot of work that went into backstage and supporting the artists and our audiences, and now the technical, there's a lot of cutting edge technology. We were searching out systems that were just being used in terms of how we move lights around, follow spots, sound, and how it follows the actor around if he's being amplified. Things to be able to, like when lights come down and you're using incandescent bulbs, they warm up and they go to a soft spot and then they disappear. This is very hard to do with LEDs. And so we found a new system that is able to do that. So in all these remarkable but small ways, we were able to use new technology to really improve this building. And Siamak, the building seems to be built for COVID, because every 15 minutes in this auditorium, all of the air is exchanged.
Well, it just happened to be like that. Yeah. I mean, we have lots of fresh air.
Yeah. I think we're pretty much at time. Siamak, it was such a pleasure doing this project with you. And let's do it all again.
The words obviously fail. Honestly, I felt like I was standing on your shoulders the whole way through, and I think it's self-evident that this was a labor of love for both of us, don't you think?
Yeah.
And I think that we're hugely proud of it. Thank you for letting us be part of it.
Thank you for conceiving of it. Now, I guess it's time to hand over to some remarks from the Dean of the McGill Library.
Thank you so much, and good evening. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Colleen Cook. I'm the Trenholm Dean of Libraries here at McGill. And I just have to say, congratulations, bravo. And I certainly know what you mean by a labor of love. And I also just have to say that I'm enchanted with your images. And the one that really struck me that I understood right away was the idea of a wooden chandelier. I got it. A wooden chandelier, a wooden basket. I knew exactly what you meant. And I think speaking in stories and images is hugely important. So I want to start by obviously thanking Antoni and Siamak for such a compelling conversation and behind the scenes look at this thoughtful, purpose-built space that is sure to bring joy and wonder to generations of theater goers. You may know here at McGill Library, we have big dreams of our own and are reimagining services and spaces for 21st century library users and beyond. And we have lots of lessons to learn from you. The vision for Fiat Lux, the library's own building project, includes spaces and services dedicated to the discovery of McGill's rare and special collections, which include over 250,000 items that are not held anywhere else in the world. That is our role. That's what libraries do. We make sure that we keep things so that others have them centuries beyond. Expanded facilities within the project, such as a rare books reading room and consultation areas, certainly will enhance library programming and service meeting spaces, laboratories, and study areas that will foster exchange among students, faculty, researchers, alumni, and the community at large. Over the last 2 years, the Fiat Lux project has evolved by leaps and bounds. The project office was established, led by Executive Director Robert Hamilton, and McGill engaged a trio of local and international architectural design teams who are busy at work on making our dreams a reality, thanks to the incredible support of countless donors the world over. And I have to admit, I think, you didn't have the joy of dealing with 3 architectural firms and the complexities of that. And anyway, I just had to mention that. And over COVID and Zooming without architects actually having been on site, but I'll leave it at that. The library is the busiest place on McGill's campus, a home away from home for so many of our students, for all of our students. This new space will make this home more comfortable, more accessible, more sustainable. It will make our world-class holdings, including our Shakespeare collections, visible to a greater number of people. And this lecture just emphasized again how difficult it is to create these spaces when normal people off the street come in and the spaces work for what they need, and the thoughtfulness and creativity and intellect that's required for that is really astounding. Community engagement has been a key aspect for us, as for you, from the very beginning, including in-depth consultations with the stakeholders at the library, everybody in the world and beyond. The project's feasibility study was funded by the Friends of the Library, and we would not be where we are today without their generous support and ongoing advocacy. A huge thank you to them for their annual programming of events like this one, and for championing the library, McGill, and students at every turn. Stay tuned as the project moves forward. And thank you again to tonight's speaker for inspiring us and showing us what's possible. And maybe I'll find the people who did the videos for your project, and they're really cool, and I love the Eddies. Okay, so I will also say I would like to invite Don Walcot, Chair of the Friends of the Library, to close out the evening. Don.
Thank you very much, Colleen. We are so fortunate to have you as our very hardworking and inspirational Trenholm Dean of Libraries. As Colleen just said, I'm Don Walcot. I'm chair of the Friends this year. And this lecture, my goodness, what an opportunity for us to hear from those on the architectural front line. Their philosophy and the challenges and rewards of creating a working, and that's what I got from Antoni's comments, the working theatrical facility. It's the washrooms as well as the play in the front that's so important. I remember back in the 1950s, my English teacher went up to the Shakespeare Festival under Tom Patterson's tent. And when she came back, she gave us several classes raving about it. And we all had to write a composition on the strengths and weaknesses of theater under a tent in the round. She would have been so thrilled just to hear this lecture. This was exactly what she was hoping that our compositions would all sound like. Thank you so much, Antoni and Siamak, for this most educational and lively discussion this evening. We have indeed been fortunate to hear your insights. And now we'll be able to appreciate this theater even more when we all return to Stratford as soon as possible. And I saw in the paper this year, so I'm looking. I've already got your brochure on my bureau, and I've got to phone up and make my things. And I'm definitely going to go to the Tom Patterson Theatre. My goodness. I wonder if we could show our appreciation for this lecture by a quick hand wave applause for the lecture tonight. Thank you so much. Before closing, I would also like to thank the events team who organized this lecture under the leadership of our Vice Chair, Lenore Harris, and with the able and willing assistance of many library staff. And I must add, the staff of Stratford, who I was told were a joy to work with. They were really wonderful. Thank you, Tony. Finally, a thank you to all of you for joining us tonight for this virtual telecast. It is so wonderful to see so many friends able to continue to enjoy the benefits of the McGill library system. Thank you all. Have a great evening and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tom.